Low glycemic index foods release sugar gradually, slowly into the bloodstream. So it's why it's recommended for people with diabetes is, remember, insulin management of sugar is not sufficient as it should be. So the food that release sugar into the bloodstream slowly, portion by portion, are recommended for them. Moderate glycemic index foods also may be okay, but should be eaten in moderation. But high glycemic index foods, these are foods that pump in sugar into your bloodstream as quickly as possible after eating. This can lead to sugar spikes in the blood and affect negatively the people that are managing diabetes. It can also be fatal sometimes, depending on the person's sugar level prior to eating. Hi everyone, you're welcome to Center-ECD Enterprise TV. This is Food Tech Talk with Mrs. K. And today's episode, we are going to be talking about special foods. In this show, in this program, we bring to you information that can be educative, entertaining, or just enlightening about the food industry, food processing industry, the food we consume as individuals, or if you are interested in joining the food industry afresh, then this program is very much for you. You're highly welcome. Today, we are talking about special foods. Now, to food processors, if you're coming into the food industry and you want to make a name, you want to work on a brand, it's always advisable for you to niche down to a particular niche in the industry, because the food industry is actually very much broad. So one area that is within Nigeria, I would say, that is not fully explored is the special food category. What are special foods? These are food that are made for a certain category of individuals, not just like food that are Nigerian staples. So when you come here, you will see foods like food specially made for diabetics, food meant for hypertensive people, food meant for uh, premenopausal women, just any category of people that helps people manage their life conditions. So today we are going to be talking about foods with low glycemic index, and these are foods that are oftentimes recommended for people with diabetes, but it's not really exclusively advisable for people with diabetes. Everybody needs to eat healthy. In subsequent episodes, we're going to be talking about food with low sodium content for hypertensives, food for the elderly. We'll also talk about food to reverse malnutrition, and we'll also talk about food for creatives, people with that work, or heavy thinkers, people that are creators, content creators that invest so much on brain work. We're going to look at special foods for all these people. But in today's episode, we're looking at food with low glycemic index as foods recommended for diabetic patients. A lot of times we'll see people making adverts and making bold claims on their food labels or in their advert, like if you eat this product, it will reverse diabetes. If you eat this product, it will cancel diabetes. You don't need your doctor anymore. Just buy my product. Now, how true are these products? How true are these claims? We are going to first of all understand what these claims are all about. As a food processor, before you make bold claims about your product, you must understand one thing: that food is food, medicine is medicine. And both, although they have a meeting ground, will not be confused to be the same. So when you are making claims, you also understand what your claims are about. So today, as we are starting, we are going to try and understand what is diabetes. What exactly is diabetes? Most times when we hear diabetes, mind goes to sugar. So when you tell certain individuals, especially young people, when did you do a test for your sugar level or diabetes, they say, no, I don't take sugar, I don't take soft drinks, so I can't be on the radar for diabetes. What exactly is diabetes? Now, diabetes is not necessarily about sugar, but about the body internal organs, how they respond to sugar. So it's not the sugar that is the primary cause. What we are looking at is how the body has malfunctioned such that they treat sugar abnormally. The body organ in question today, or on focus today, is the pancreas. The pancreas is an organ in the body that is responsible for production of a hormone called insulin. Now, let me explain how these things work. When we eat food, carbohydrate-containing food, you remember in our primary school, our doctors taught us that energy-giving foods are carbohydrates, so they give energy. That energy is actually called in from sugar, different levels of sugar. Okay, now, so when we've taken food that contains carbohydrate, the body recognizes it, the pancreas immediately releases insulin, produces insulin. Insulin gets into the body and controls how the body uses that sugar for providing the body with energy and so many other things. And now, when the pancreas is not working properly, the sugar released into the body is not going to be apportioned to the body cells as needed, and it now lies fallow in the body bloodstream. And that is when you test the person's bloodstream and say the bloodstream is high in sugar. So maybe from there the doctors may diagnose and say, oh, this person has diabetes. Now we see that the problem was not caused by sugar necessarily, but the body's malfunction. They classify diabetes in two ways. It can be type 1 or type 2. Now, type 1 diabetes is um, an immune uh, problem, is an immune system problem where the body's immune system recognizes that cell, the body cells inside the pancreas that produces insulin, which controls blood sugar. The body cells, the body recognizes it as a negative thing. So in fighting germs, it also fights those cells that produce insulin. Meaning that when the body does not have sufficient insulin because the body immune system is destroying it, that person's response to sugar becomes different or becomes inappropriate. So you see type 1 diabetes, it can be diagnosed most times in children. So we are now noticing that diabetes is not necessarily or not always a lifestyle disease. So because what does a 13-year-old child, what lifestyle has he really gotten to land him in diabetes? So we see that type 1 diabetes can be genetic, or sometimes some viral infections can lead to that malfunction. Now we also look at type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes, that is the one that is actually a lifestyle challenge. Now, if the insulin in the body does not produce sufficient insulin to work on the sugar consumed, sugar lies in the blood unused. Another way to it is if the body produces sufficient insulin, but the body is resisting it. So insulin cannot function the way it should function. The blood sugar level increases. So whatever the case may be, we see that it has to do with internal organs, not necessarily the sugar. Now that we understand this, when sugar is lying fallow in the person's blood, the body starts working hard to remove it because excessive blood sugar level can lead to other organ damage. So the body recognizes that this is an abnormality and tries to remove it. In trying to remove it, the end product is urine. So you see the person urinating frequently. You see this person getting tired because the body cells, sugar is not getting to the body cells sufficiently. So you notice that this person is getting tired, even though he's eating well. And the person urinates often. So because the person is losing water through urine frequently, that person begins to get dehydrated. The person may start losing weight, start having dry lips, getting emaciated. It can even also affect the person's vision. Now that we understand this, I want to clarify something. A lot of people from this part of the world like to, once they notice somebody talk about particular symptoms, they take it to the bank. It's not like malaria. A lot of times you have headache, you have chills and joint pains. Boom, you diagnose that malaria and you speed up to the chemist and prescribe anti-malaria for yourself. And if it's too expensive, you notice some people even produce their own anti-malarial drugs, combine this herb and this herb, neem tree, bitter leaf, and they take it and in a few days they are fine. Diabetes is more serious than that. Malaria is actually very serious because your accuracy in diagnosis may be like 60% accurate, but then there is also a chance that there are other things that have similar symptoms that are not malaria. And there are also situations where you have malaria with other things. You treat malaria, the other things are still there. So it's still not advisable even for malaria. But in diabetes is a complete no, because you're going to be risking your life. So don't go and say, oh, Mrs. K mentioned that once you are urinating often, that you are thirsty and you're always tired, it means you have diabetes. That's not true. Go to the hospital and see a family physician and be tested appropriately. What are the factors that make somebody, what are the risk factors for type 2 diabetes? The risk factors for type 1 diabetes, you can't really control it, is genetic and maybe other factors that are not within your control. But the risk factors for type 2 diabetes, some of them, not all, some of them are within your control. Now, is number one is family history of diabetes. You can't change your family history, you can't change your genes. So there's nothing you can do about this one. The second factor that predisposes somebody to diabetes is age. As you are aging, as you're advancing in years, so are your organs getting tired of doing certain functions. So people that have lived up to 4 decades, from 40 years and above, your pancreas has been working for 4 decades non-stop. So you see, it can start getting tired. So people that are above 45, I must say, should continue to test for diabetes, have routine checks for all these things. Now, people that are overweight, if your body weight is heavy, if you're heavy on your weight, you need to work it down because you're exposing yourself to these hazards. Then gestational diabetes. Gestational diabetes, it happens in women. It can happen from age 25 and above. Or women that have diabetes when they are pregnant. When they put to bed, they are fine. Or people that have heavy babies. You have children that are over 4 kg. That's a risk factor. It tells you that you might be at risk for diabetes. Now, American Center for Disease Control listed these risk factors and also suggested or recommended a three-way approach for managing diabetes. Number one is weight loss. If you are overweight, you need to bring down that weight with speed. The second way is eating a healthy diet. And the third way is getting regular physical activities. Now, when we see these things, food processors listen very well. Can you see that there are other ways? And it is managing diabetes, not cure for diabetes. So I don't want to see you pasting on your cocoyam flour again that it cures diabetes. Now, eating a healthy diet is just one way approach to managing this condition. There are other ways. And the Center for Disease Control mentioned three. I will add the fourth one, which is routine checkups and getting medical support. If you are diagnosed with diabetes, you are not just going to be eating foods with low glycemic index and running and exercising. You also need to be under supervision of your family physician. Do not joke with that. So today, we are still talking, our topic is foods with low glycemic index. We have understood what is diabetes and how it works. We have also understood ways that are recommended by professionals, healthcare professionals on managing it. So people that should listen to me today very much as I'm talking about foods with low glycemic index, if you are already diagnosed for diabetes, whether type 1 or type 2, pay attention. If you have pre-diabetes is maybe sometimes your blood sugar level goes up, I bet you're not really diabetic. You are on the radar, you need to pay attention. Gestational diabetes, you're watching your weight, whether you are overweight or not, you just want to know how to eat healthy. If you are over 35, yes, Center for Disease Control said 45 and above, we are at risk. But you don't want to get to 45 and find out that you have diabetes. You need to understand what causes it, and so you'll be on preventive mode. If you're an athlete trying to know how to have energy, manage your energy over long period of training or competitions, you need to understand how glycemic index works. So, what is glycemic index? Glycemic index, also called GI, is a numerical scale that ranks carbohydrates based on how quickly the body absorbs it and utilizes the sugar from it. So, how quickly does a bowl of rice increase your blood sugar after consumption? If it does it so perfectly, it's 100. If it does not affect your blood sugar level at all, it is a 0. So food that do not have carbohydrates are ranked on 0. So when you have food that have trace quantity of carbohydrates, they always have 0 glycemic index. Meat, beef, fish, chicken, they are rated 0, 0 glycemic index. Oils, they are 0 glycemic index foods. But food that are less than 55 on the ranking is a scale of 0 to 100. 100 being high glycemic index, that's 70 to 100 is high glycemic index, 69 down to 56 is moderate, then 55 to 0 are low glycemic index. Low glycemic index foods release sugar gradually, slowly into the bloodstream. So it's why it's recommended for people with diabetics is, remember, insulin management of sugar is not sufficient as it should be. So the food that release sugar into the bloodstream slowly, portion by portion, are recommended for them. Moderate glycemic index foods also may be okay, but should be eaten in moderation. But high glycemic index foods, these are foods that pump in sugar into your bloodstream as quickly as possible after eating. This can lead to sugar spikes in the blood and affect negatively the people that are managing diabetes. It can also be fatal sometimes, depending on the person's sugar level prior to eating. So it's important for you to understand these things. What are the factors that affect glycemic index of food? So if you go to research a database, you're going to see the ranking of different glycemic index of different foods. And those food that are ranked 70 and above, they are not recommended. Even if you have to eat it at all, you need to take in small quantity. It doesn't make those foods bad, but we are talking of how it affects sugar levels in the blood. So now, as a food processor that wanting to go into special foods for this category of persons, it means that the food you are going to be manufacturing is going to have glycemic index that is from moderate to low, preferably low glycemic index foods. How do you get food to be low glycemic index? We need to understand the factors that affect food. If you understand the science of food, you know that food, if you bring one apple and bring another apple and you test the two, they will not have the same proximate composition. One may have higher carbohydrate composition, one may have higher vitamin composition. All these things depend on soil type, how it was planted, how it was harvested, how many days post harvest, and a lot of other factors. So now, number one thing that affects, in no particular order, the glycemic index of food. One is the species of that food. So it's not good enough to just say plantain is low glycemic index. What species of plantain? We, in this part of the world, we have native one, we have the general one. I don't know the exact classifications. I don't have the botanical names in my head at this moment. But there are different species of different food. So cocoyam, you have different species of cocoyam. Yam, you have different species of yam. You find out that white yam has a different glycemic index from yellow yam. Understanding these things will now tell you that if you want to produce food, yam, for diabetics, you need to look at what species of yam gives a lower glycemic index. So you go for the species that is the least. So its traceability now comes to play. You need to trace the farmers making this food and buy directly from them, from that particular species that has given you result of low glycemic index. There was a research report I saw from one university in Ghana, where they tested the glycemic index of different yams, water yam, yellow yam, and the regular white yam. Surprisingly, you find out that the regular white yam had lower glycemic index than the yellow yam, which a lot of people promote as being healthy. Now, it doesn't mean that this yam is not healthy, because the color alone, that yellow color alone, suggests that it's high, rich in antioxidants. It has a lot of vitamins in it. It can be rich in vitamin A. But when the subject matter right now is response to sugar. So you find out that though it is healthy and very good, but when you're talking about functional special foods for diabetics, it is better you go with white yam. Now, the next thing that affects food is the nutrient composition of that meal, the nutrient composition. Remember, we mentioned that we have zero glycemic index foods, we have high, we have moderate, we have low. Now, foods in isolation have different glycemic index than when it is eaten in combination. Let me explain. Eba and soup, for instance. Eba may have a glycemic index of over 90. It should be around 95 or so, of over 90, making it very close to 100. Now, if you're taking this eba with, let's say, groundnut soup, which has a lot of groundnut, which is high in protein, that combination brings down the glycemic index of that meal. Applying zero glycemic index food with high glycemic index food brings down the glycemic index, it lowers it. So as a food producer, when you are producing, it will now be suggested that you try combination of flours. Let's say you're trying to make fufu. It's better to go with composite flour. Composite flour is a flour that has a combination of different products. So you may try different options or during your food product development to get different glycemic index food, combining low and high, so that people can have options and also to lower the glycemic index. So nutrient composition is very important in the glycemic index of foods. Another thing that affects it directly is the cooking method. So what method are you using in producing this food? So it's good enough to say, oh, spaghetti has let's say moderate or high glycemic index. If you cook spaghetti for 30 minutes and the spaghetti you cooked for 7 minutes, the 7 minutes cooked spaghetti will have a lower glycemic index than the one you cooked for 30 minutes. So time of cooking, temperature of cooking affects it. When we are talking about temperature of cooking, you know that the medium of cooking will now come to play. If you are roasting or if you are grilling, the temperature can go as far high as 300 degrees centigrade. If you are grilling, that means you are cooking on open fire. Or if you are frying, you are cooking in hot oil. But if you are cooking if you are boiling, that's cooking in water, you find out that the temperature will not go that high because water will boil at 100 degrees. So you find out that most foods, the boiled version of that food gives lower glycemic index than the fried or roasted version. So as a food producer, you watch this as in your pre-treatment in making your foods. So it's better to go for boiling or cooking than going for frying and roasting. So the cooking method affects the glycemic index. Talking about that research work I saw is from Kwame Nkrumah University, Ghana. They worked on the different species of yam and they also worked on different cooking methods, finding out that boiling, as it concerns the species of yams they worked on, was a better method. So it doesn't I'll also give another example. For instance, cassava has a high glycemic index. Now, if you bring this cassava and you convert it to eba, you will get a glycemic index of about 95. If you convert the same cassava, you ferment it, and you produce fufu out of it, you are getting a glycemic index, though still high, but a bit lower, about 85. Then if you are turning it to abacha, the shredded cassava, it drops even further to about 79, 80. So the method of processing also counts in this. So it's not good enough to say, oh, because it is this product, it is cocoyam, it means that it is safe for all diabetics, and you label it that way. You may be putting some people's life at risk because the method of processing may have increased the glycemic index beyond the what it would have been. Now, glycemic index of fruits and vegetables. A lot of people say you can't go wrong with fruits and vegetables. They are always safe. When you're talking about this particular thing, sugar modulation, they are always not safe. Most fruits are low glycemic index, very, very low. And another factor that maybe we'll explain in another class will be glycemic load. Let's leave that for another class because most fruits have low glycemic index, but there are vegetables that are very high in their glycemic index. When you're talking about carrots, potatoes, beetroots, sweet corn, their glycemic index are very high. So though they are vegetables, it doesn't automatically mean that they are high, that they are low, or that they are recommended or they are safe to eat for this category of people. They are healthy, they have lots of nutrients, they have antioxidants in them, they are very, very healthy. But with regards to how the body will treat its sugar content, they are not recommended. Other foods that are not recommended may be honey. Honey is organic. Remember that being organic doesn't exempt it from releasing sugar. It's not about how it was produced that we're talking about now, but how it releases sugar into the body stream. So, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? I will be closing with final advice. If you are diabetic, read labels. Read labels of food. But because we know that the people we are working with, a lot of food processors stamp funny things on labels. Don't just read labels. Be a personal researcher. Research by yourself. You can't just trust yourself to people, even doctors. Be your own researcher. So by researcher, I mean monitor your body, understand how your body functions. You need to have your own blood sugar testing kit so that you can be able to test yourself maybe 2 hours after eating, do your fasting blood sugar test to understand how your body responds to certain foods, so you know what is safe for you and what is not safe for you. Another thing I will say for a person that is diabetic is, do not miss your hospital appointments, even if you have been fine for a long time. Don't be tempted to slack on that because of possibility of sugar spike. Or if you're a food processor watching me, I beg you, do not put what you have not tried out or tested on your product label. Avoid generalization. Be scientific in your approach, because when you make these claims, you are putting people's life are depending on you. People read your label and believe you on what you say, meanwhile you didn't test it. So understand that food product, it works differently. So understand this and do proper testing before you make claims on your label. Be a researcher. Be a researcher. Go through research work that has already been done. There are thousands every year. Different countries churn out graduates, and all of them run research work. Go to universities' websites, go to their database, go to Google Scholar, look for research work that has been done under microbiology, under food science and technology, under medicine, and find out what has already been done. Even if you cannot afford to go into personal research, you must be a researcher as a food producer. Get information and get information properly. Then label your product properly. Do not put misleading things on your product. Then when during your own research also, you can explore. You can explore with all the foods that have low glycemic index and bring out delicious foods, delicious combinations that can help individuals that want to control their sugar intake. Remember, it's for diabetics, elderly, people that are over 45, and just any person that wants to be moderate on consumption. You will be serving these people. And I bet you there are a lot of people under this category, and can have a niche out for yourself in this area. Thank you very much. I believe today's session has been quite informative for us. I will also want us to subscribe to this YouTube channel. You can also make comments on the comment section, and you can also contact me if I work on food product development. So if you're a food producer and you want someone to assist you in product development, that is my area of specialty. We can work together to bring out amazing food products that within the niche that you want to serve. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's episode of Food Tech Talk with Mrs. K. Have a beautiful